If you spend hours in the gym and see no changes, it's not a lack of effort. It's bad science. Today, I'll explain how to train less to gain more. Welcome to This Explainer. We're going to completely debunk one of the most destructive myths out there for strength athletes, the stubborn belief that more gym time automatically equals better results.
As that opening thought hits on, junk volume is a very real, very frustrating thing. More is definitely not always better. So let's dive right into the hard biological realities of overtraining. If you're a strength athlete chasing maximum power or serious hypertrophy, well, what we're about to cover is absolutely going to change how you program your routines forever. All right, part 1, the catalyst. We're looking at the 2-hour trap. This brings us to a really critical concept, and that's junk volume. Basically, this is exactly what you're doing after an hour or so of intense lifting. We're talking about sets performed way beyond your threshold of recovery saturation. They give you literally zero positive adaptations. Your recovery processes are just full. So throwing in extra sets, it only multiplies the structural damage and systemic fatigue. You see, the stimulus you need to gain strength simply follows a strict curve of diminishing returns. And this limit is brilliantly illustrated by the number 8. Meta-analysis show us that 8 is pretty much the absolute maximum number of productive sets you can do per muscle group in a single session. By set 9, muscle protein synthesis completely flatlines. So think about it. If you hit 12 chest sets, those last 4 are pure, unadulterated junk volume. You're just digging a recovery hole that your body simply can't climb out of. Okay, moving on to villain number 1, hormonal sabotage. Let's contrast two totally different scenarios here. If you keep your workout under 60 minutes, you maintain an awesome anabolic environment. Your testosterone stays elevated and cortisol is kept safely at bay. But cross that 2-hour line, the whole reality shifts. Your cortisol spikes exponentially. Testosterone literally plummets, and boom, you've entered a catabolic, muscle-wasting state. Not exactly what we're going for, right? Now, the absolutely crucial point here is that this excess cortisol doesn't just, temporarily halt your growth. It actively triggers a process called the ubiquitin proteasome pathway. Try saying that 3 times fast. But seriously, what this means is that cortisol literally breaks down the existing contractile proteins right there in your type 2 muscle fibers. Those are the exact fast-twitch fibers responsible for your explosive strength. You're basically destroying the muscle you've worked so incredibly hard to build. Which brings us to villain 2, glycogen depletion and weakness. This is where we have to look at the body like a machine running totally out of fuel. When you train for 2 hours, the localized glycogen within your muscle fibers drops way below a critical threshold. And without that local glycogen, your sarca calcium pumps simply run out of ATP. So if the pumps fail, the calcium isn't released. And if there's no calcium binding to troponin, your muscle fibers physically cannot contract with any force. It's an acute mechanical failure. Your muscles actually have the structural capacity, but the ignition signal, it's been completely cut off.
And that leads us to villain 3, central nervous system fatigue, or CNS fatigue.
We really have to distinguish the local, burning feeling of peripheral fatigue from the systemic, neurological failure that is central fatigue. So with peripheral fatigue, you know the feeling, it's that lactic acid burn right in your bicep. But in central fatigue, your motor cortex literally loses the ability to send electrical impulses strong enough to activate your high-threshold large muscle fibers. The exhaustion isn't just sitting in your muscles anymore. It's literally taking over your brain and spinal cord. The science behind this is honestly fascinating. Prolonged training triggers this massive neurochemical response. As branched-chain amino acids deplete in your blood, high levels of tryptophan cross right over into your brain. And what does it do? It rapidly converts into serotonin. Now, this flood of serotonin totally crushes your motivation and reduces your neural drive. It's essentially inhibitory feedback, forcing your brain to protect itself by only recruiting those weak, type I fibers.
So let's visualize all of this. Here is the overtraining continuum. We'll start right at the bottom with undertraining. Here, the mechanical stimulus just isn't quite enough to trigger any meaningful physiological adaptations. Sure, it's a safe zone, you aren't going to hurt yourself, but it yields absolutely zero performance gains. Next up is functional overreaching. Now, this is the optimal zone. This is where the real magic of training happens. It's where targeted stress, followed by adequate recovery, leads to supercompensation. You break the muscle down just enough, and it bounces back even stronger. But, and this is a big but, if you constantly push toward that 2-hour mark and keep piling on that junk volume we talked about, you hit non-functional overreaching. Your adaptations completely fail, performance stagnates, and you enter this incredibly frustrating state of extreme overreaching that can actually take weeks or even months to fully recover from.
Finally, if you keep digging, this cascade leads into full-blown overtraining syndrome. This isn't just being a little bit tired. It is a systemic physiological breakdown. Your hormonal, biological, and neurological regulatory mechanisms are severely disrupted. We're talking months of clinical recovery just to get back to baseline. Truly scary stuff for any dedicated athlete.
All right, enough doom and gloom. Let's look at the resolution. Smarter training.
Here is your data-backed physiological sweet spot. The key takeaway? Keep your sessions under 90 minutes. And honestly, you can forget that old myth of 60-second rests. You really need 2 to 3 minutes between heavy strength sets to regenerate your ATP and clear out that CNS fatigue. Cap your max sets at 6 to 8 per muscle per session, and try spreading your weekly volume, say 12 to 24 sets, across the week instead of just totally annihilating a muscle group in one single day. You also want to keep a very close eye on these biometric red flags. If your resting heart rate creeps up by 5 to 7 beats per minute for no obvious reason, or if your morning heart rate variability systematically drops over a few days, listen to your body. Your autonomic nervous system is literally crying for help. Ignoring things like sleep disturbances or persistent fatigue guarantees a massive loss in your performance. So the final question you really must ask yourself before your very next workout is this. Are you ready to drop your ego, cut out all that junk volume, and finally unlock your true athletic potential? Remember, the intensity and the sheer quality of your sets matter so much more than the countless hours you spend under the bar. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and remember, train smarter, not longer.